Howdy, howdy. I lost the host. Hopefully, Bill will come back in here in just a little bit. Well, here he comes. All right, going to turn it back over to Bill. There you go, Bill.
Hey, welcome to Model Railroading Live. This is Who's Big Bill talking to tonight. It's February 8th, 2023. This is our first time back in quite a while. Yeah, we took off December, January, and stuff like that. Yours truly had some surgery done to himself. Nothing serious, not life-threatening. It was quality of life. I had my knee replaced, and now we're back in the saddle, and we're up and running, and hopefully this will be back on track. That was a pun. That was a joke. It was a joke. So anyway, here we are. So we're back from a hiatus, a medical hiatus, and personal rest and relaxation, and we have a good show for you tonight. But before we go on, so let me let you guys know that Johnny's still doing his Johnny's train track show, where you can come on down and be a part of the show. And at 9 p.m., oh man, I am so friggin' rusty. I'm telling you, I am rusty. I am so rusty. Let me get my groove here. I got to get my groove back. I've been away so long and stuff like that. Hey, Robert Holman's in the house. Jason Volk, Joe G. What's up, guys? And Ethan Armoridge is in the house as well. How you guys doing? Guys are all right, I hope. Anyway, let me start all over again. Here we are. Model Railroading Live. Who's Big Bill talking to? First show of the year for 2023 in February. And yeah, that would be Johnny's train talk show. So that's going to be on February 16, 2023 at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So stuff like that. But let me tell you what's been going on here to shed some light why we took off. Took off at the end of December because I had upcoming surgery, coming to have my knee replaced, my left knee to be exact, and on January 3rd. So we have been in recuperation mode and physical therapy. And John himself has been taking a little rest and regrouping, and we've just been getting our collective act together. So we're back, and hopefully we can get some shows done for this year. I'm looking for some guests. If anybody knows anybody who'd like to be a part, Who's Big Bill talking to, please give them a shout out, give them my information, and let them know. I've been sending feelers out to people to be on the show. Haven't heard anything yet. Chris Lambert's in the house, RMA 1958 is in the house. Model Railroading Live, this Discord chat. We have Discord, a new chat, Discord, on Discord, where you guys can go to discuss model railroad topics. Down below is in the chat box, you'll see the Discord stuff. We switched to Discord due to the rising cost of whereby. So that was one of the reasons that we're on there. But that's if you look in the right there on screen, you'll see the Model Railroading Live new chat, Discord chat. You can go there. Has a ton of information, a ton of different topics, different channels. They have the text. You can text on there. You can join, obviously, and it has the channel text where some of the guys from here get on there in the evening time, about 9-10 o'clock at night, and just have a good old talking model railroading and whatever other subjects come up. But that's basically what it is. But that's what we've been doing. So with that said, Tonight's show, by the way, is being sponsored by Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago. If you have to have good sausage, Abe Froman's the guy to go to. Yeah, Robert Holman says they have voice, video, and text chat capabilities on Discord. Rail Artist is in the house. Missed you, Bill. Missed you too, Rail Artist. Glad you're here. Drum 68. Hey, from Illinois. Did I say that right, Illinois? Or is it Illinois? Whatever. Nice to have you in the house, Trump 68. Drum 68. I hope I said that right. New to the show? I hope so. Anyway, like I was saying, sponsor of tonight's show on Model Railroading Live, who's Big Bill talking to, is Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Ohio, or Chicago, I should say. And if you need sweet sausage, any kind of poultry or meat products, Abe Froman's the guy to go to. So as you can see our elaborate set behind me, this is what Abe pays for. So thanks, Abe. Anyway, without further ado, we'll bring our guest in, and tonight we're going to be discussing. We have our guest, Bill Baronic, aka the Track Planner. I know some of you guys are saying, "What? The Track Planner again?" Well, I'll tell you, Bill brings a lot to the table, and tonight we're going to discuss errors and omissions for the realization of what is it again, Bill?
Errors and omission and how it affects realism and believability.
Right. You were in the green room there. Did you get our complimentary platter of Abe Froman sausages? And
I declined.
Oh, you declined. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I did. I was.
I think John forgot. I think he forgot to refrigerate it again. I have to talk to him about that.
Oh, there was a refrigerator in there?
There wasn't? There should have been.
Well,
You didn't see it?
It was little if it was there.
Yeah, one of these guys must have came in and took it. That's what happens when you're on that budget, the Abe Froman budget.
Somebody should pay your light bill for you. I really think they ought to.
You think I should put light behind me?
Well,
All right.
I mean, the lighting might look better.
Well, we're on a small budget here, Bill.
That's for sure.
And wearing the black T-shirt doesn't help, but
well, I got black on tonight too. I don't know why.
But you're in a well-lit room.
I'm in a well-lit room.
Yeah, see, I'm not, and the only reason I'm not is because we didn't. It's my son and I are here, fending for ourselves because my wife is under the weather. So if I turn the light on, you'll see all the dirty laundry.
Don't look, huh? Well,
yeah, don't look.
It's like with mine. All you see is the bookcase and the ceiling. You don't want to see the floor.
Yeah, exactly. I got, Bob Holman says he'll bring back the refrigerator next week. Oh, okay. Now we know where it went.
There you go.
So, Bill, what have you? We've had the summer off. We've had the winter and the holidays off. I hope everything is well with you.
Yeah, everything's fine. As this design business goes, it's got to be feast or famine on this thing. And I'd like to mention you, because I think I told you this the other night. I've been trying to go 100% paperless. So I had all these track plans I did when I first started, and I bought this fancy scanner to get everything digitized and everything get into the computer, as far as not having all this paperwork. So I'm going through the paperwork, and shocking to me, I started this whole thing and I actually started messing around in 2013, did my first track plan that I charged somebody for in 2014. Here we are in 2023. And I was telling Johnny there a little earlier, between myself and the gentleman that I contract with, I've got 8 track plans I'm working on right now. And that, but if you would have went back between Thanksgiving and Christmas, you would have thought that my website quit working.
Yeah,
I wasn't getting anything. As soon as the new year hit, boom, It
And
was,
that's a good question. Let me ask you: in this economy that we're in right now, with the high inflation and people, I'm sure people want to trade a dozen eggs for a track plan.
yeah.
How is business been? I mean, are you finding the same level of of track plans coming in?
Well, yeah, the level's the same. What is really, and this I have no explanation for. I don't understand this at all. Um, I have my, it used to be HO, and it would be, I used to think it was probably 75%, 80% HO, and maybe 25% N scale. Out of the 5 track plans that I'm doing right now that I'm working on, 3 are N scale track plans. 3 out of the 5 are N scale.
Yeah.
And the gentleman in Tennessee that I designed for, he's got the same situation. He keeps coming up with these N scale. I said, "What's going on in N scale? I don't understand it."
Well, I think it's probably most likely is a lot more less expensive than HO
True.
rolling stock engines, and you
Well,
can get a lot more trackage in a smaller space.
the COVID situation for me, at least, sadly to say, not bragging, but it didn't really hurt me that much because everybody was home
Mm.
and they were looking for things to do and that. And it's no, but when I looked at that stuff, I was digitizing. I was going paper. I thought, my God, 9 years, and I'm trying to think where that 9 years went. That's the problem. Because you and I talked, I did yours in what, like early 2015
15,
or something?
15 January of. In fact, I was
Right.
actually the last one you did until you started charging. So
Yeah.
just
Well,
saying.
you were the last guinea pig, is what you were. See?
Well, that's all right. I was the begging and the groveling,
Yeah, I know.
the stuff like that. Robert Holman says, I think it's because N scale is getting to be a better quality. True, and
No
cost is
question.
roughly the same. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
before we start, I have a good friend of mine. His name is Tom. Lives out here in New Jersey. He just moved and he took down his HO scale layout, and he's looking to sell everything. Everything. He's got steam engines. He's got locomotives, steam locomotives, and I think he's got about 3 of them. And he's got about I don't know, about a dozen steam engine, diesel engines, and rolling stock. And he's looking to sell. He's got trees, landscaping material, and he's looking to sell it. So if anybody's interested, reach out to me, and I'll pass the information along to him, and you guys can work it out. But I seen his stuff. It's pretty good. It's modern. I think it's DCC stuff, and he's asking for everything about $950, which isn't bad. So if anybody's interested, hit me with an email at my South Brooklyn at gmail.com, and I'll pass your information on to him and stuff. But I just was thinking about that, and I said I would do it, and I wanted to take care of it.
So should we tell them a little bit about what we're going to try to do here for the next few weeks?
Hold on, let me check my book here.
Or should we let them be guessing?
Nah, let's tell them. I have it on my cheat sheet here. But go ahead.
That's right. Bill and I talked about this earlier, actually probably last year sometime. A lot of the shows that I've done heretofore, they go, they've gone way over an hour. Some have gone an hour and a half and longer, which I have no problem doing that. But I kind of thought, why don't we try to do some shows where we can stay specifically on one area, one thing, and I can do it kind of like the new YouTube Shorts. instead of being, we won't do it in 2 minutes, but we'll try to keep the thing in a reasonable time frame. I still want questions. I still want people to ask things because that's what makes the show good. But what I've come up with, I've got 3 shows in the can, as they say already, and I've got a 4th one I'm working on. And it's just things that revolve around things that I get involved with from the design standpoint. Now, like tonight, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go and this is only going to be probably 25 slides tonight, so it's not going to be a long one that I'll prattle on for a long time. But tonight I'm going to do one on errors and omissions that people make and how that affects the realism and primarily the believability of the layout, because I'm a big fan of, as most of the people that are watching know, I started this business not to design railfan layouts, but to design layouts that operate prototypically. And there's a lot of things that people do right. There's a lot of things they do wrong. So I thought, let's just do a show talking about the errors, the omissions people make, and how that affects the layout as a whole. So that's what we're going to do tonight. In a couple of weeks, I've got a show that I did that's done that's on point-to-point layouts. How you can design a layout as point-to-point, but still let it run continuously. That'll be another show we'll do, and again, we'll try to keep it, reasonably short. I'd like to get some feedback from the people that are watching, because I've got this one, as they say, in the can already, but I don't know if it's going to be of a heck of a lot of interest to people. I've got one on, I call it bench work my way. I see so many people build bench work, and lots of bench work gets overbuilt, but I think there's some really neat ways to do it, easy ways to do it, quick ways to do it. And I wouldn't mind doing a show on how I built the bench work on my layout and see if it interests anybody at all in that. So if this is something you guys would like to see, great. If it's something everybody says, oh, that would be really boring, I don't have to do it. We can go another route if we have to.
Well,
and then the other one, go ahead.
Robin Holman says, I'm excited for the next series of show. I'm designing a triple deck HO scale layout for a 48-foot by 50-foot shop. I'm modeling 30 miles of BNSF, Seattle subdivision from Tacoma, Washington to Chalhas, Washington. So yeah, I think people have a design. Anything model railroading, Bill, I think they do. People are,
and I really, it's just the way that I've learned it over the last 2 layouts that I've built. And maybe people will find it. If they don't find it interesting, I guess they don't have to watch. And then the last show that I think we're going to, the point of these 4 shows is, as I told Bill, I'd like to get all the shows in and done by the 1st of April. Because for me, when April 1st hits, golf season hits out here in Colorado, and I run a golf league with almost 100 people in it, and it's a senior league. So I have to herd about 80 cats every Tuesday, and the golf league takes a lot of my time. Plus, I play in a couple other leagues. So when golf season hits out here, I've got a lot of things to do. This time of year, different ball game. We got snow on the ground. It's been cold out here in Colorado. I like doing these shows. So we're going to try to do 4 shows over a period between now and the 1st of April.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm always interested in what Bill has to say. It's always nice to get his insight. That's from Joe G.
Hi, Joe.
And the next show that we'll have, just to give you a heads up, and we'll mention at the end of the thing, is February 22nd.
A couple weeks from today.
Yeah. Right? Not next week, but the week after.
Right. And also, if any of you guys and girls that are listening out there watching this, if you have an idea, something you'd like me to talk about, let me know. Let Bill know, because believe me, I'm just kind of throwing darts at a dartboard here, seeing what's happening.
Nah, so far you've been hitting the bullseye every time, Bill.
Well, I just thought doing some of these little specific things, and we'll see how this one goes tonight. That'll give us a pretty good idea.
All right. Well, let's rock and roll with this then.
Okay. You want me to bring the screen up, Bill? Should we start?
Absolutely. Let's get going. And remember, folks, the show's been brought to you, is being sponsored by Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago.
And if I do this right, this will work. We're going to find out here. Do we have a screen up?
We do. How Errors and Omissions Affect Realism and Believability by the Track Planner.
Well, I think we're ready to rock and roll here, Billy.
Oh,
as we start through this, Bill, if questions pop up, don't be afraid to interrupt me, please.
Not at all, Bill.
Okay. All right. Again, like I said, we're going to talk about the errors and omissions that I see people make that affect the realism and the important to me, the believability of the layout. So let's talk about some definitions first. Errors. According to Webster's dictionary, it says departing from or failing to achieve what should be done. There. Other words, making the right decisions. Omissions. Something neglected or left undone. I see that happen a lot of times. Believability. Capable of being believed, especially within the range of known possibilities or probabilities. Again, with model railroading, we're everything's kind of make believe here. We're trying to make a miniature world believable, and but you got to keep it within the realm of possibilities, or it isn't believable. Last one, realism. The concern for facts and reality and the rejection of the impractical. Boy, do I see a lot of that happen, where people are doing things that are totally impractical and that, but for whatever reason, they decide to do it. Okay, let's talk about the errors first. Here, we'll do that. Failing to set standards. What you're seeing on this, first of all, as I say here, without standards, believe me, you're just inviting failure on your model railroad. What you see here in yellow in the bullet points is the things that I go through before I ever start designing a layout for a client, regardless if it's a bedroom layout or it's a layout for a museum size. I want to determine the main line minimum radius, any branch line minimum radiuses, tangent track spacing on curves, minimum turnout sizes, maximum grades, minimum crossover sizes on turnouts, which is really important. There are minimum clearances. This deals with basically vertical clearances. There are train lengths. There are people being realistic in what length trains they can run on their layout. Benchwork heights, really important. And then the spacing if we're dealing with multiple levels of layouts and that. So these are the things that I tend to decide with the client before I ever do any design work on the computer. Setting unrealistic goals. This is a picture you're seeing here of the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. And the gentleman in the picture is actually the gentleman that put the money up to get this museum up and running. And if you ever come out to Colorado and you see the museum, I just want you to be aware is what you'll be looking at is what $1.5 million will buy you in a model railroad. Okay. This gentleman and I are very good friends. Unfortunately, he moved back to Pennsylvania to be with his kids, but we still talk to each other once in a while. He's a fabulous gentleman. When it comes to setting unrealistic goals, one of the problems is the unrealistic goals come from emotional wants. People get emotional attachments to certain things, and they have to have it, whether it's a good idea or not. They have to have it. So as I say here, when emotional attachments can lead to anxiety, stress, and mainly poor decision making. There, and believe me, people send me track plans every once in a while to look at, and I can see things in those track plans that should never be there, but the people are emotionally, attached to certain things, and they think they've got to have it. I don't know if we could ever talk enough about grades and slopes and everything, but the one thing I see done constantly when people miscalculate a grade or a slope on a layout. If you're calculating grades on your layout based on a straight piece of track, you're doing it wrong. That's not the right way to do it. Why is that? Because most grades on most model railroads are on curves. They're not on straight pieces of track. And you have to allow for those curves and the friction that those curves cause. Everybody knows this. If you're going to go up 4 inches on a rise and you want it to be 2%, it's going to take 200 inches of length to get you up to 4 inches at 2%. The same 4-inch rise on a 24-inch curve is still 2% at 200 inches, but the effective grade goes from 2% to 3.3%. Now, that's a 40% increase. And what does that mean? That means you're reducing your pulling power by about 50%. So an engine that would pull 20 cars up a grade that's 2% on a 24-inch curve, you might be lucky if it pulls 10 cars that grade. So this is a error I see many people make when they, because like on my layout, I've got a helix that's a 2% grade technically, but it's actually about a 3% grade when you figure the friction in going around each level of it. Conceptualizing is deciding how to make the best use of a space. I truly believe, and this is not trying to be egotistical or anything, that being able to conceptualize is probably what separates professionals, designers from the novice or the beginner in the hobby. Once I know through the questionnaires on my website what the client's wants are, then I can look at the space that they have, and by a combination of the questions on the questionnaire and the space he has, I'm pretty good at conceptualizing what to do with the space. At the bottom there, that little saying that's underlined, I can't tell you how many times people have said that to me. They said, I would never have thought of designing it that way. Okay, that's where the conceptualization comes in on an open space that you deal with. So I think that's really important, being able to conceptualize what you want. Lack of pre-planning, boys, this is one that you see a lot of. For most people, especially that are new to the hobby, the overwhelming desire to get trains running tends to supersede any pre-planning that they do. And I firmly believe rushing to build bench work and lay track leads to preventable programs if you'll just slow down. Now, the picture that you see on this particular slide was of my layout when I was designing it. Sure, I designed it in any rail and I had all that stuff to do, but then I built a mock-up of it just to see if it would work the way that I had it designed. And this three-dimensional view really helped me out with some decisions that I made down the road there. So pre-planning, that's an omission I see a lot of people do.
Bill, may I ask
Go ahead.
that 3D that mock-up, what did you build that out of?
Taking a drink here, excuse me. That was simply made out of foam board.
Okay.
Narrow foam board. And then what I did, I built it out of just foam board, and then I printed out the track plan and simply glued each level on there that I was doing just to see if it would work. Now, this happens to be actually a 3.5 level layout in a room that's 16 by 13. It's not a big room and that, but there's 3.5 levels to this thing here, and I needed to make sure that it was going to work like I expected it to. But that's just foam board is all it is. There. This is something a lot of people don't talk about very much. Is people pick the wrong era. And what I mean by the wrong era is they probably don't even ask themselves, is the era that I'm picking my best choice? For what reasons? Okay, let's assume you pick late modern. Okay, what are you going to deal with? You're going to deal with long freight cars and massive motive power. Do you have the space to deal with that? Can you build a model railroad that'll be believable for the modern era when you're going to be running all this large equipment? Early modern, you got a little bit shorter freight cars and you got a little bit smaller diesels. Maybe that's a better way to go, excuse me, as opposed to trying to do the today era, as we would say. Transition era, 40-foot freight cars and 4-axle diesels. That's what you had back then. And if you're talking about the diesel side of it, much easier to design a layout when you're dealing with 40-foot cars and 4-axle diesels than when you're dealing with 80-foot cars and AC 44s and things like that. Does the right era improve believability? Absolutely, it does. No question about it. But I think we all have our favorite eras, and we just don't think about changing them when we should change them. When maybe we should think about it.
Hey, Bill, we got Tim Wayman on the line here, and he says there's the 6 P's of model railroading, and it's proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
That is exactly right. Exactly. I've never heard that one before. That's a new one. Yep. And I'm really old.
Proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
Absolutely. What about the wrong scale? Do people even think about that? I know we all have our favorite scales we want to design it, but does anyone ever ask themselves, am I choosing the right scale for my wants and my available space? I don't think people really, that maybe even comes into play. The bottom line is real simple. How often do modelers change scales? In my business, almost never, because there's numerous times I've suggested to people, because of space limitations, hey, let's not do this in HO scale. Let's go down to N scale. I can design a much better layout for you, one that'll have a little bit wider aisles. It'll be more comfortable, and I think you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of it. Does it ever happen? Honestly, I can't remember one time that somebody agreed with me on that. So this is kind of a wish thing for me, that people would at least think about it, and that it doesn't happen.
Well, I think also, Bill, you have to remember that 2 people make investments in the scale that they like to work with. So they've already committed their money to that. And then when they go to you for the track plan and you say, well, wouldn't it be better if you did it in N scale? And they'd be like, well, I spent all this money.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, Bill, because by the time people come to me, it's because they've tried it on their own a lot of times and it hasn't worked out. And they couldn't try it on their own unless they had equipment and that. So, yeah, this is kind of a wishful thinking part on my part there, because there's so many layouts that I've designed that I go, boy, if I could have just done this in a different scale, we could have done a much better job on it.
Yeah. Robin Holloman says new modelers consider that more than seasoned modelers because of fleet sizes.
True. And I firmly believe, I've been around this hobby for almost 55 years now, that unless you've got a little bit of hoarding in your genes, you're not a real model railroader. because I see people buying equipment. I just about 3 years ago, I helped on an estate sale. The gentleman had a really nice layout that he was building, high quality layout. He unfortunately had passed away suddenly, and I was helping his widow get rid of the stuff. When she opened up a couple closets for me and I started doing inventory, 220 diesel engines and just under 500 pieces of rolling stock. Now he had a nice layout, but that layout wasn't even close to being big enough to support that amount of stuff.
Sure, sure.
But that's what people do. That's what happens. Okay. Bench work widths. This is one of my pet peeves I have because it's one of the hardest things for me to explain and convince people that wider is not better any way, shape, or form. And everybody's like, well, I got to have more room. No, you don't have to have more room if it's designed correctly. One of the things that people don't understand is that if you've got a 30-inch wide aisle in the corners there, you've got a reach in that can approach upwards of 50 inches into that corner. Well, unless you're 9 foot tall, it's hard to reach in 50 inches and do anything. So you have to stand on stools or something like that. A lot of people don't understand how much of a scene you can create and make it believable on an 18-inch wide piece of bench work. And this is a picture of some of my bench work. And that bench work right there is from the back to the front, there is 18 inches. And it's plenty of room in this. And I'm doing HO scale, by the way. Overbuilding bench work. How many people have done this there? Now, again, this is my layout of my room. It's in a 16 by 13 room. Those 4 2x4s you see, plus one more that I have at the end of this peninsula, this whole layout has 5 2x4s on the whole thing. Everything else is either 1x4s, 1x3s, or 1x2s for the bench work. I do use 2x2s for the supporting the bench work up against the walls, which is what you see as the vertical pieces of the bench work there. But this layout has 5 pieces of 5 2x4s, and all they're there for is to help support the peninsula on this layout. There, everything else is 1-inch dimensional lumber on there, and it is strong, not a problem. Okay, let's talk about omissions, what people leave out that I think are really important to making a layout believable. This is uno number one for me. This is the biggest omission I think people make, is not including staging on their layouts there. I'll go to my grave arguing this point here. I don't know of anything else that will add to the believability of a layout more than staging. Why? In my mind, without staging, trains don't go anywhere. Yeah, they maybe run in a circle, but they basically don't go anywhere. They just go around the room, around the track, and that's it there. Staging connects your railroad to the outside world. There, you don't think in terms of just my layout. Now you can think in terms of a nationwide network of railroads that you're connected to. And the famous saying out there, think beyond the train room. Boy, I'd love to engrave that on some people's foreheads, because they tend to think, they think about just the room that they're in or the space that they're in. So this is my number one thing, omission that I think people make that is a major mistake. People will say, well, I don't have room for staging. I've designed a lot of track plans where we only had 2, maybe 3 tracks for staging, and it made all the difference in the world in how that layout operated there. It went from a rail fanning layout to an operating layout with 2 or 3 tracks is all it took. There, so you don't need a lot. this is another one of my little things that I see happen on model railroads. Nobody puts people on them a lot of times anymore there. And layouts only come alive when you've got people and animals. This is a scene off of my layout that I had up at my ranch before my wife and I moved into town. But if you look at this scene with two people talking to each other and the dogs standing there, that at least in my mind, in my opinion, that makes the scene. That brings the scene to life. Something's happening there. And talk about profound statements is layouts without people is like a zoo without animals. Okay. Now I'm sure not everybody thought of that one, right? Yeah, sure. There, but I see people, they get all wrapped up in scenery, they get all wrapped up in a lot of things, and all of a sudden there's no people around.
But you know that's very true, Bill, because I have to say that on my former layout, the one South Brooklyn, I remember partnering with Miles Hale, and we built that Kentile floor sign. That was the dominant piece sign that was in the layout. But I also built one of the other buildings on the side, and I had a fire escape on it, and I would take tracing paper and cut it into small squares and just dot it with some black ink and then glue them on as windblown paper. And I remember friends of mine came in from the old neighborhood where we all grew up, and they saw I wanted to show them the Kentile sign because it was part of our neighborhood, and the business was part of most families that lived in our neighborhood worked for Kentile. So I remember bringing them in, and they were more intrigued with the small newspapers on the fire escape than they were with the sign.
That's right.
And it's amazing what draws people's eyes to what they see. And you're right, it does make the layout more alive and people,
I have to tell you a story about that because that reminds me of something that happened this weekend. I'm designing a track plan for a gentleman, and he's in Florida, and it's going to be a pretty large track plan. So he decided he wanted to come and talk to me personally about this track plan because I'm charging him quite a bit of money to do this. It's a big one. And so I said, that's fine. So he came out here for 2 days to Colorado, and I took him to a couple of layouts. I took him over to the museum, the Colorado Museum. We spent time over there. And then I took him to two other layouts that I thought he would be interested in seeing. Well, one of them, probably most of the people listening to the show tonight know, and it's John Parker's Burlington Northern Santa Fe Fall River Division layout in his basement. It's a 2,700 square foot layout built in a mushroom design benchwork. And I think easily John's layout is one of the top. It's in the top 20. It could be in the top 10 home layouts in the United States. It's that good. And that I operate on it. Fortunately, I'm able to do that. John lives about 40 minutes from me here. Anyway, I took this gentleman down to see John's layout there, and John has a scene on the layout of a paper shredding company that shreds paper and puts it into bulk blocks, and then they ship it out from this company. Well, John is retired now, but when he was working, he worked for IBM in some capacity on security and things like that. If you look at the dock on this paper recycling company, there's all these little pieces of paper all blowing in the wind that are on the ground, on the tracks, on the dock, and then you see these cubes of paper. Well, this paper is incredibly small. I mean, it is just stupidly small. And if you talk to John about it, IBM has a shredder that I have an expensive shredder in my house here, but the shredder that IBM uses to shred paper shreds the paper about 10 to 15 times smaller than my shredder, and my shredder does it really small. What John did is they were shredding highly sensitive information that IBM had. John says, "What are you guys going to do with it?" They said, "Well, we're just going to recycle it, throw it away." John says, "Can I take a couple of handfuls?" They said, "Sure." So these blocks of paper on this paper recycling industry on John's layout is actually IBM secret documents that have been shredded, and it's just
Well,
one of the little things that if John didn't tell you this or you didn't know it, you just walk by it and look at it and say, well, that's kind of a neat scene.
yeah,
And I think,
yeah.
again, we're talking about believability here. And this scene is so believable. And then we're also talking about what I'll talk about in a little bit about there's a story that goes with it. Okay, let's keep going. Speaking of storytelling, this is a picture from over at the museum in over at the Greeley Museum there. Um, you need to tell stories. Scenes need to convey stories. Uh, if you as you would first look at this scene, you say, well, okay, it's a little rural town with a gravel road and some businesses. No, it's way more than that. If you look at the circle at the bottom there, you'll see some people standing around this car, and these guys are pushing the car over the edge of a cliff into this huge ravine that's behind these buildings there. Well, the question is there a body in that car, or are they just getting rid of the car? You're telling a story there. That's what you're doing. The other picture behind the fir tree is a bunch of kids over there, and the cops show up. And what are they doing? What are they checking on? The kids drinking? What are they doing? If this scene tells a story, it's just not a scene on the layout. This is another thing that I think gets omitted from many, many model railroads. Now, this is my pet one is the believability of a layout. And I'm not going into great detail here. Matter of fact, you're only going to see 2 slides on believability here because I think it'll prove a point here. This is a picture of the Potlatch paper mill in Lewiston, Idaho. The layout that I had up at my ranch there before I moved into Fort Collins, I modeled the Camas Prairie up in Lewiston, Idaho there. They had the Potlatch paper mill was there, and I wanted to model it. Well, all you got to do is look at this scene for a little while, and you start figuring out, I don't think there's a layout in the world that could successfully duplicate this paper mill. When you get looking at the sizes of the bridges that go across the river, you get looking at the size of these buildings and everything, there's physically no way you could do it. But I wanted to have the Potlatch paper mill on my layout. I wanted it there. Well, my layout that I had, the one before the one I've got now, was in a building that was 24 by 24. The layout was basically a little smaller than that, but it was approximately 24 by 24. Well, that's not a bad sized building, but when I was modeling the Camas Prairie, there was no way I could put a rendition of the Potlatch paper mill on that layout. So what did I do? The three circles that you see, the red 3 circles, are the 3 things that I used from this paper mill for my layout that I modeled. I used the Clearwater tissue mill, which was a building that was not that big. There's a chip pile that I've circled there. And then there's the lumber specialty building where they do special things. That's all I modeled on this thing was that. What did it look like? And we'll show you here. This scene is 24 inches wide, 24 inches deep, I'm sorry, and it's about 10 foot wide. And this is my rendition of the Potlatch paper mill in HO scale in basically 2 by 10 foot space. Now, interesting about this little scene is when we held op sessions, this scene here was one of the ones that a lot of the people wanted to do. This was the most popular job on the railroad. And the other thing that was interesting about it was this one took the longest to do of any of the jobs on the railroad on this 24 by 24 foot layout. there, because there was no tricks on this. It was just a lot of switching moves that you had to plan in advance. What was the important thing about this? Selective compression. This is what, again, I think that along with conceptualizing things, I think this is one of the things that professionals can do pretty well, is they can figure out how to selectively compress a scene and still make the scene believable there. And that's what you have to do. You've got to compress it, but the secret is, can you make it believable when it's done? And this scene here, again, that was probably one of the most popular jobs on that layout before we moved into town. Realism. Let's talk about that, because I think that's missing on a lot of layouts. This was the world's tallest model railroad mountain up until about 3 or 4 years ago, when somebody built a museum layout, and they built the mountain about 6 or 8 inches taller than this one. And this is the mountain on the Colorado Museum layout over in Greeley there. The point of this picture is this, and I'll show you some more of them about realism. In the real world, scenery dominates trains. On model railroads, for whatever reason, it's exactly the opposite of that. People put so much track, do so much stuff with industries, that all of a sudden the trains dominate the scenery. And that's not how it is in the real world there. Again, my opinion, I think it hurts realism and it hurts the believability of the layout, without any question. Now, people can't build 18-foot tall mountains. I realize that. But regardless of the size of your layout, I think you should be thinking about, are the trains dominating the scenes, or is the scenery, like in the real world, dominating it? Here's an overview. What you're seeing in this picture is about 60% of the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. To your left, there's a whole bunch, and to your right, there's a lot that are not in this picture here. But what I want you to kind of take a look at and be aware of, it's kind of hard to find the track work. You got to really do some studying to see where the track is, because what you're seeing is scenery there. When I was involved with this when it opened in May of 2009. We had a gentleman who was an expert on model railroads and museum layouts, especially. He came about a week before the grand opening, and he did a complete tour of the layout for Dave, who was the financier of this thing. And Dave sat down with this gentleman after he had spent about an hour walking through this layout. And he says, what do I have here that we're going to open up in a week or so? He says, you don't have the biggest layout I've ever seen. He says, I've seen ones that are much bigger, but he says, what this layout has that I don't see on other layouts, he says, is your ratio of scenery to track is almost perfect. He says, it looks believable. It looks real. And this is where I get a lot of my inspiration when I design, is trying to mimic this, trying to make it look believable. And could it really happen there? This picture here. How many bridges are in this scene? Well, there's 10 bridges here, but I would defy somebody to be able to count them and see them all. There's one there. There's one there. There's one there. There's another big one there. There's another small one there. There's a big one there. Smaller one up there. Another one over there. And another one there. And finally, another one right there. And finally, there's a little one sitting over there. Let me go back. Those are 10 bridges, and it's hard to find. On a lot of model railroads, what's the dominating scene that people always build? The bridge. They always want the bridge to be the wow factor, and that's fine. I'm not arguing that shouldn't be the way it is. But here's a layout where the bridges, yeah, some of these bridges are fabulous. You're going to see a picture of one in a minute here that is incredible. But for the most part, the bridges are not part of the dominating scenes in the layout there. There's the bridge that's the one that gets photographed the most for anybody that goes to the museum and visits the museum. Interesting story about this bridge. Dave, the financier of this thing, built that bridge, completed it, finished and done before the building was even built. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he wanted in a bridge. So he built this in his spare time. It's all hand built, stored it away and kept it stored away until it got to the point to where we could install it on the layout there. And it's, I have to say, it's a hell of a scene there, and I think it kind of proves the point that the scenery and the trestle and everything tends to overpower the train there.
And it does.
Rivers. Here's another scene on the layout. Two main lines running different directions here. Again, even if those tracks had trains on them, they don't dominate the scene there. The river, if you haven't visited this layout, I highly recommend this museum. I recommend you do, and you will see one of the things you'll see on this layout is some of the best representation of water that you'll see on any layout anywhere. I mean, it's gorgeous as far as I'm concerned. But again, the trains are not overwhelming this scene. Unfortunately, the gentleman that built this scene or built these two sawmills here has since passed away. But these are actually detailed inside and everything. It's not just the outside that you're seeing. But this is what a realistic sawmill in the Pacific Northwest would look like. This is what it looks like. And again, the scene is the important thing, not the trains that are on it there. And that's a really those two buildings are fabulous buildings. They're just, and if you could lift the roofs off of them, you'd be amazed what's in there. This is my last slide, guys, and I just put this one in here for the fun of it to show again the river scene on the museum layout. And we've got a dog and we've got a person out there on that little island. How'd they get out there? Well, there's little stepping stones where you see the rapids running there that you're able to walk out on to get there. And again, when you look at this, most people are looking at the river, they're looking at the scene, the bridge they see, but they don't pay a lot of attention to it. There. Hey, Billy, I did that whole thing in 45 minutes. That was pretty good.
You're getting better at this every time we do it.
You may put me on full time here sometime.
Yeah, we'll have to put you on retainer and maybe put you on the payroll.
Now, I'm more than happy to go back and show you guys some of these slides if you want to see them again. If you have questions, please ask. There.
Well, I think that what you explained here was thorough, and it kind of enhances the layout itself. The trains are just a complementary part of the layout. Even though we're building the layout for the showcasing of the trains, by this formula, they're just complementing, the layout, and the scenery complements the trains and the trains complement the layout,
Well, if we do the show on creating and on how you set up an op session on a layout, this will come back into play again, where you need scenes on a layout where nothing is happening except the train is running through the scene, because your operators a good example is, again, we'll go back to John Parker's layout, 2,700 square foot layout there. Lots of places for switching, but John has also built into the layout areas where for 30 seconds or 45 seconds, you're just running through scenery. You're not doing anything else, but the train is going through a scene. No industries, nothing like that. The advantage of that when you're an operator on that layout is it gives your mind that 30 seconds or so, lets your mind calm down. You don't have to, you're not worrying about what's ahead, how do I switch here, what do I do here? It just lets your mind rest and believe it or not, that 30 or 45 seconds is all the mind needs
Sure,
to kind of refuel itself.
It amazes me. I know someone that has the whole heritage collection of engines, of diesel engines, and and he has them in a special showcase and everything. And I remember when we were talking, and I said to him, he's very proud of all the heritage engines he has. But I said to him, do realize that when you put that engine on your layout, which is a very nice layout and very well done, that the attention is not on the engine, the heritage engine. It's on the overall layout itself. The engine just complements it. Again, I'm going back to that word of complimenting the layout. He's showcasing the engine, but people aren't looking at it. It's just a tool that, it's a machinery that's pulling the train, and people are looking at the overall aspect of the layout itself. Joe G says it's hard to come up with questions when you explained everything so well. I just
the check is in the mail, Joe.
Yeah, everything so well. I've always enjoyed the story with all the micro scenes of a layout. You reiterated the importance of that perfectly. Happy Valley Hobby says, nice presentation of what I saw on Model Railroading Live. I would also add, do dioramas to practice on. Yes, that's very true.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely true to do. Someone had, if Randall Ellis said, if I ever get good enough, I want to model that bridge scene right there. Well, Happy Valley Hobbies just mentioned, if you do this in a diorama, you're not killing your layout. If you make a mistake, you destroy it and pull it all out, and frustration comes into it. It's do dioramas and stuff like that.
Well, and let him know that if he ever comes out to see this museum layout here, there is a display up on the mezzanine level that shows exactly how a river scene on the river scenes on this museum layout were done. Dave put together about 4 different dioramas from the start with the pink foam to adding, the plaster gauze to it, going through each one of the steps. And the one that people are the most interested in is obviously how did they do the water?
Yeah,
there.
sure.
Little side note here that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but it kind of gives you a perspective on the size of this layout. This layout is in a 10,000 square foot building, and the layout takes up not quite, I think, 9,000 feet of the building. And that water scene that you see there, as good as it looks and everything, that has to be cleaned on a fairly regular basis, because as soon as the dust gets on it, it causes it to look dull. And that, so there are people every Monday they clean track on this museum layout, and then every so often someone goes around with kind of a special little tool they've figured out to make, and they actually wipe down the water to get the dust off of it.
I believe it. Randall Ellis says, if I tried something like that now with more experience that I have, it would look more like somebody threw up on the layout instead of looking like that picture. So I agree with you.
I'm going to go back a couple slides here because I want to explain something to people here. This slide here that's got all the circles. Let's get rid of the circles here. On this, what you're seeing here, and again, you're seeing about 60% of the layout here. there is a Dave, again, the person that put the dollars up to do this, he went up about, actually it was only probably about 5 miles from where I had my ranch. He went up into one of the uh, canyons out here in Colorado, and he picked up real rocks that he wanted because he thought the colors were correct, and he was the colors he wanted to match when he built when he built. And Dave did probably, um, I think he probably did over 65% of the scenery on this layout. If somebody's going to ask this, so I'll put it out there right now. The trees on the layout, there's 16,000 of them. If somebody cares to ask, there's just between 15 and 16,000 trees on this layout,
How many
and
trees?
I helped make some of them.
How many trees?
16,000
Wow.
there on the layout. But to go back to the scenery, Dave picked up these rocks out of this canyon, brought them back, and that was kind of his sample there. Well, some of those rocks are on this layout. They're built into the layout in certain areas, but there's only about 5% of this layout that is real rock. 95% of it is plaster. And I would defy anybody to walk around this layout and find the real rocks. That's how good a match Dave did when he started doing the coloring and everything for this thing.
Robin Holman wants to know: are they all hand built trees, or a mixed with commercially made?
Probably 80% of them are handmade. Maybe 15 or 20% were commercially bought. There ain't many on there. What we did, I can tell you a little story about that. And this is when there was just bench work. There was no scenery and everything. And Dave got a hold of me and 4 or 5 other guys out of our Northern Colorado club here. And he says, we're going to have a tree building Saturday morning over here at the museum. And he says, we're going to build trees. So okay, that'd be kind of fun to do. So what the trees that are hand built here are basically skewer sticks that have been tapered and roughed up to look like bark and everything. And then what Dave did to show you how I guess we recycle is probably the best term. He got for free used polishing pads from a commercial flooring company who did polishing of floors with these commercial rotary pads that went on the big machines. Dave got those for free. We sat down, a bunch of us, this Saturday morning, and we started tearing these apart into everything from 50-cent size to dime size, and then we put them on the skewers and sprayed some hairspray on them, and then did some ground covering on them. The way you've seen, there's 50 videos out there on how to do this. So we worked from maybe 9 o'clock in the morning till about noon or 1 o'clock, and Dave had all the skewers all stained, finished, and ready to go. All we had to do was start tearing these polishing pads apart. So we get ready to go to lunch, and I start counting, and I counted 600 trees we had done that morning. So being a real smarty and dummy at the same time, I says to Dave, I says, hey, buddy, we did pretty good here. We built 600 trees. He says, Bill, we're going to need over 10,000 trees. He says, and that kind of brought it all back into perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But my understanding now, I was just over to the layout on Saturday for a couple hours, and I was talking to one of the old timers over there. And I says, any idea for sure how many trees are on there? And he says, we're pretty sure it's between 15 and 16,000 altogether.
Wow. Bernard C. says cleaning is often discussed in numerous forums, chat rooms. How do you keep the layout dusted? I'm thinking positive pressure and air filtration.
He's right. The filtering system in this room is all first class. But here's another little side note. not only does dust get on the river scenes that you've got to get cleaned off of there, and that those trees get dust on them and they start looking fake. In the back room here, there's not as many as there used to be. When I was over there Saturday, there wasn't that many there. But at one time, there was probably 1,000 trees that were stored in the back room at this layout, and they were there just to be able to replace trees that wouldn't clean up very well, so that the layout always looks good, always looks clean, never looks dusty or dirty.
Yeah.
So they actually replaced the trees
I believe it.
down the road when a tree really gets looking bad.
My biggest problem on my layout used to be spider webs.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if that's a problem or not here. I don't think it is. At least if it is, they're doing a hell of a good job of cleaning it up.
Yeah, I'm sure certain maintenance. I mean, it all, people, that's the amazing thing about doing a layout. I think this is the only hobby where we all gather around and we talk about how we want that ultimate layout. We want the big layout, the monster layout. But there's so much more that goes into it that sometimes it can emotionally overwhelm you.
Well, I've told the story 100 times, so people get tired of hearing it. And this happened to you, Bill. I mean, you got a hold of me one time. I designed these layouts for people, and they see it on paper, and they see it when I send them the prints, and everything looks great. Oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be great. Well, there's a common call I get at about 3 months down the road, or an email from a client. I've been building bench work and laying track for 3 months, and I haven't even run a train yet, they will say. And as you know, Bill, sometimes they hit brick walls on
Yes,
that.
I
And
do.
what I tell all of those people that call me and give me that story, I tell them, here's what I want you to do. So leave the room, lock the door, and don't walk back in for 3 months. Just stay away from it. Get away from it for 3 months. And then when you come back, you'll have a way different attitude about it. And then I always tell them, I always say, understand that what I designed for you, is just not a slap it together track plan. And, again, understand this is a marathon. This is not a sprint to get to the end of it here.
Well,
enjoy the period of time that you're doing this.
Yes, I will tell you. I will tell you that that my experience of building the South Brooklyn layout has been tenfold educational, inspirational, eye-opening, and in the process of getting ready to do the second South Brooklyn layout in the basement, I am into ultimate planning. I am just collecting things and doing, I want to do it. I don't want to make the same mistake I made the last time, where I built the layout, built the bench work, laid the track, scenery, and it was a nightmare afterwards because, when I would run across a mistake or run across a track that needed to be repaired, the whole thing had to be torn out and then redone again. So this time I'm planning, buying cobblestone street sheets and storing them, and going to the hardware store, going to Harbor Freight and buying, wheel sets to put on the layout, to pull them out and pull them in. And, my wife is like, do we really need this stuff? And where are we putting it? And I'm like, don't worry. I got this covered, but you learn from your past and you do it. But again, like I said earlier, when you undertake one of these layouts and you want to build it the way you want to build it, there's so much more than running trains. There's the maintenance of the track. There's the maintenance of the upkeep of the electric. There's fine tuning it. It's just an ongoing endeavor, and it's not it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, but
it's a good thing. Well, a good example of what's, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show here, I've got this inordinate amount of N scale layouts that I'm designing for people, which is just kind of a new phenomenon for me. The problem is, I shouldn't say it's a problem, but the issue that I'm having is the majority of those layouts, the people want to design them using N scale code 55, which I think is great. I think it looks much better. It looks a little more prototypical and everything, as opposed to N scale code 80. But what I have to drill into them, and I think they get tired of me hearing it, is if you're going to use code 55 in N scale, your track work has to be bulletproof.
Yeah.
Absolutely has to be bulletproof. And I tell them, when you build this, build the bench work, lay the track, get the electrical done, get trains running, and then for 3 to 6 months, just run trains. Don't do any scenery, don't do anything else, just run trains, try to find all the bugs. And if you want to find a bug quickly on your layout, a bad piece of track or a problem, bring somebody over who's never run a train in their life, who has no interest in model railroading. Give them a throttle and let them run a train around your layout a few times. They'll find them for you there that you never even found. They'll find them for you. I've seen it happen many, many times.
Yeah. You're correct on that assessment.
But the problem is nobody wants to wait 3 to 6 months to start doing scenery.
No, it's our impatience. It's our biting at the bit. We want to saddle that horse and ride off into the sunset with it.
Maybe it's this instant gratification world we live in now.
Yeah, that could be. Robert Holman says, I've designed a few layouts for myself and a few for others. I've also built 3 layouts for myself. I do great at building everything right up to scenery, and that's where my ability falls on its face.
Yeah. Well, this gentleman that came to see me this weekend, that spent the weekend with me, this is a big layout that we're designing for him. He's going to do all the bench work, and he's going to lay all the track, and he's going to do the electrical, but he's going to pay someone to come in and do the scenery for him.
Yeah. See,
he says, I know my limitations. That's what he told me. He said,
I think we all do, but I tell you, I enjoy doing scenery.
Well, look how much better you got, Bill, from the first version of the South Brooklyn we did for you. Then we modified the track plan. During that period of time, your not modeling skills, your scenery skills, your detail skills got way better.
Mine was an urban decay, So yeah. I just, like, anything that was like, if I saw something, I just threw it on the layout,
See, that's not easy to model urban decay. It's a lot easier to model a nice Class 1 railroad,
run through. I was at a flea market going through it, and there was a watch guy there selling watches, and he had a little bin of watch parts, springs, wheels, everything. I said, how much you want?
A store full of them.
Yeah, how much you want for the box? He said $15. I said, I'll give you 10. You get 10. I went home, I took them, I put them in the rust inhibitor stuff. I got them all rusty, and I would just plop them on, and people would say, oh, what's that spring? I said, oh, it's from the factory that went out of business down the road. I make up a story. And the other believable thing is, and I think that to make it personal, and I did this on my layout, is I made it personal. I made the layout personal. I named buildings and stuff after family members and friends.
The layout was a reflection of you.
Right. I have a whole story on the O'Shea junkyard, like how it started from the conception of it and the whole thing, but it makes it that much more interesting. And it's always amazing when people would step into the room and they'd ask questions, like, well, okay, well, what's, and I start telling them the story. They would actually look at me afterwards, we'd go out to the dining room and have coffee and cake, and they would say, I actually believed that there was such a person that actually runs that junkyard like that. And that makes it more believable when you have a story that connects, and the little things. Like I had a little scene on the thing, the One Time Bar, and you see a guy walking in the front door. He's got the orange vest on, and there's a guy out the back door, and people would look at that and they go, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, that's the supervisor walking in to find if there's any employees, and that's the employee walking out the back door." So that you add the believability of each little scene.
Tell a story. Tell a story.
Yeah, tell a story, and
Tell a story.
I late when just before I was, for my personal family reasons for taking the layout out, before the thing, I was traveling back down in my old neighborhood, and I happened to come across a building that was iconic in my neighborhood, and I said, oh, I got to model that. And I had a bunch of modeling. I had a bunch of buildings, stored away, and I, scratch built. I threw them, cobbled them together, and Miles Helm, 3D the print, and I put the South Brooklyn Casket Company in the layout, and Miles was, kind enough to make 3D caskets for me, and I had them, strewn on the layout, around it. And people would say, "That's what's this?" I said, "It was the South Brooklyn Casket Company, and there was an actual business in Brooklyn. And you would go by there, and they would actually have the caskets out on the street on pallets stacked, and the forklift truck would come, and stuff like that." So again, the believability of, like, if you make it personal, that's something, whatever, era, or if you're a Pennsylvania guy, or you're like Roberts from Washington State, and he's designed, you got that feel for it, so what's going on, and it makes it.
That's right.
People come in and you make it more believable. It makes it a lot more enjoyable and fun.
It does. So we've gone on an hour now, Bill, and I promised we would try to keep it at an hour.
I'm throwing you out of here, and I'm sure you've been. And I'm sure you've been at a better places than this.
No, what I'm going to do is go eat dinner. Is what I'm going to do here.
Well, thank you, Bill, for doing this. Tune in.
If there's any more questions, I'll certainly stick around and answer them. I'll be happy to do that.
Even at the benchwork stage, you can do small modules and practice scenery. Timothy Wyman. Dwight at Northern Star says, trying and failing teach you a lot, and then you get better at it. Yep, that's true.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you, Bill, for doing this and kicking off the new year with this and stuff like that.
I hope the people enjoyed it.
They did. I think they were listening then a lot more, taking it all in and absorbing it. We're going to be back with Mr. Baranek, a.k.a. the Track Planner, on February 22nd at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's Mr. Baranek's website, trackplanner.com, www.thetrackplanner.com. Also be aware, and I hope I can say this freely, that if you're in a situation where you're designing yourself a plan and you get stuck, Mr. Baranek would be more than happy to help you out.
Absolutely.
As I say, the first 299 questions are free. Number 300, I got to charge you. But it's out there for you. He's willing to help. He's willing to do the right thing and stuff like that. And that's the best thing. That's what makes Mr. Baranek a real stand-up guy in this hobby. So I will tell you that his generosity is beyond compared to any man I've ever met before. So again, February 22nd at 9 p.m., we're going to have the second part of that. And what are we going to be talking on that? Just give us a little glimpse.
Well, I think we'll do the let's do the point-to-point designing layouts for point-to-point.
All right.
And what's involved in doing that? People sometimes think the only way you can have a point-to-point layout is you got to have a great big room, big layout. Really don't. You can do
No,
you can do it.
No, not at all. Not at all. I agree.
That's right.
So it's going to be on a point.
then I've got the other ones. I've got the other two. I'm thinking is, we've got the bench work one, and we've got if they want to listen about fairly simple ways to set up op sessions, we can talk about that too.
All right. Well, that would be interesting. I think that's something that's much needed, to do.
You have to be a little careful on that, because for me, because of the number of layouts that I am able to operate on out here in Colorado and the quality of the layouts, I have to be really careful I don't get down in the weeds too far.
Yeah, it can
You got to
happen.
be really careful with that.
I got it. Well, again, so on the February 22nd, I know I said that again and again and again. We're going to be back with Bill Baronic, aka the Track Planner, and we're going to continue this on the point-to-point layout type system. And in the meantime, be aware that this show has been sponsored by Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago. Remember to buy your sausages from Abe Froman. He has them good sweet sausage, hot sausage, links. You got it. Hot dogs. The best. Andy Crawford says, I want to go into the weeds. Of course he does. So with that said, again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. I want to thank John for being the producer director of this show. Without him, I'd be talking to dead air here. So again, you guys take care. You be well, you be safe, but most of all, you be blessed out there. And we'll see you guys on the radio.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it.